Hello, my name's Darrell Wildberg, and as you can see by that little lapel pin right there, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm going to die a Jehovah's Witness. That's right. If necessary, I'm going to die a Jehovah's Witness. And there's nothing any of you apostates can do about it. I know that makes you all sad, but it's the truth. You guys have tried everything on me. To no avail. Yeah. This video is not approved by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. It's not approved by the 8 faithful members of that governing body. Jesus labeled the faithful and discreet slave 2,000 years ago, Matthew 24:45-47. And it's not approved by any local body of elders. I don't need their approval because I have the approval of Jehovah God and Jesus Christ, his anointed and appointed King. My King, their King, and your King, whether or not you want to admit it or not. Today, I see that another apostate named Marcia the Hooligan has made a video with my name in the title. I don't know if it's that they're just ignorant, stupid, or just stubborn, or if it's a combination of all three, stubbornly, ignorant, and stupid. But they keep putting my name in the title of their videos like I'm going to watch their videos. I'm not watching your stupid videos. But I can't tell what you say. I do go to them and get the names of them. I'm curious. And I look at the comments. Now, the first comment, there was only one comment there when I went there today. There'll be more later because the idiots are going to come out in droves. But there was one comment there by J.W. Suicides. Supposedly there's all these Jehovah's Witnesses who want to commit suicide or have committed suicide or something that this ignoramus is going to fix. But the one that she's commenting on, Marcia the Hooligan, told me that I should wrap my lips, that if she were me, she would wrap her lips around the end of a revolver. And this idiot J.W. Suicide, and I'm a Jehovah's Witness, so here we got this Marcia the Hooligan suggesting that I should wrap my lips around the revolver, and she's supported by J.W. Suicides, who's supposed to be against Jehovah's Witness suicide. These people are so hypocritical that it's pitiful. I don't wish that on anybody. I don't wish death. I don't wish sickness. I don't even want people to get busted by the police. You know how somebody, you're sitting there and you're doing the speed limit, or maybe you're doing a little bit over the speed limit, and some idiot moron comes by 70 miles an hour. Have you ever said, oh boy, where's the cops? You ever said that? Don't do that. Because you're wishing badness on that person. You're wishing that person receives a ticket and has to pay for that ticket. Maybe that guy's got 6 kids. Maybe he's rushing to get home or, go to work or something, So don't wish that upon anybody. You want more on the wild beast. The beast of the book of Revelation, the beast of the book of Daniel. I didn't give you enough and you want more. Well, guess what? Today we're going to start off in the 1962 Watchtower, December 1st, pages 730 and 731, the two-horned beast. At Daniel 8:20, an angel of God told Daniel that the two-horned ram that he saw represented the dual kingdom of Medo-Persia. By this explanation, God throws light on what is represented by the wild beast that the Apostle John saw after having seen the dragon and the wild beast that ascended out of the sea. And I saw another wild beast descending out of the earth, and it had 2 horns like a lamb, but it began speaking as a dragon. And it exercises all authority of the first wild beast, in its sight, and it makes the earth and those who dwell in it worship the first wild beast, whose death stroke got healed. And it performs great signs, and it misleads those who dwell on the earth because of the signs that were granted it to perform in the sight of the wild beast. Revelation 13:11 through 14. Now, what could this wild beast or Satan's visible organization, what could it be? What could it picture? Looming up prominently in front of the wild beast or Satan's visible organization have been Great Britain and the United States. It's referred to as the Anglo-American. While both are separate nations to all intents and purposes, they have functioned as a dual world power. Their language, their heritage, their principles and policies being the same, and they have been working together ever since their differences were settled in the War of 1812. History records that since the promulgation of the Monroe Doctrine in 1823, England, Great Britain, and America have been collaborating in world affairs, striking examples of which they furnished in World Wars I and II. Of all the world powers to dominate this globe, from Egypt, the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, this Anglo-American dual power has been the greatest. It has spread out further than any other, and by its succeeding the Holy Roman Empire as the dominating world power, it became the seventh world power of Bible prophecy and history. Its having horns of a lamb are in keeping with the beast of Britain and America, that they have fought only defensive wars and not wars of conquest. Of course, except Iraq. Certain it is that it was not by military conquest, such as those of Alexander the Great and Napoleon. The Great Britain first became a world power, it being joined by the United States in the early 19th century to form the Anglo-American world power. It has gained its ends by the lamb-like methods, as it were, of diplomacy, commerce, and religion. Though posing as a lamb, it has nevertheless had the voice of a dragon, a powerful voice, a voice like that of the dragon, Satan the devil. By reason of its being the world power, this two-horned beast has exercised all authority of the first wild beast, dominating the rest of the world. Due to its prominent position in Satan's world, the effect of its aims and methods has been to cause the nations of the world to give their devotion to Satan's organization instead of to God and his kingdom. It is linked with the dragon and the wild beast of Revelation 16:13, where it is termed the false prophet. Let's turn there for a moment. That's Revelation chapter 16, and we're going to consider verse 13. Now, I got to tell you, I'm using the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. You can get a free copy right here. You can download it to your computer, free, no charge. Or you can stop off at any congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses and pick you up a free copy, a hardbound copy. So verse 13 in chapter 16 of Revelation reads thus: "And I saw three unclean, inspired expressions that looked like frogs come up out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the wild beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet." That this false prophet is indeed the same as the two-horned beast is clear from both the physical facts and the reference to it, Revelation 19:20. Please, let's go there. Please turn with me there. Revelation 19, and let's consider verse 20. And it reads, "And the wild beast was caught, and along with it the false prophet that performed in front of it the signs with which it misled those who received the mark of the wild beast, and those who worship its image, while still alive, they were both hurled into the fiery lake that burns with sulfur. Now, that this false prophet is indeed the same as the two-horned beast is clear from both the physical facts, and again, we reference it where we just read, where the false prophet is depicted as having done the things mentioned as being done by the two-horned wild beast in chapter 13. Now, the wild beast was caught, and along with it, the false prophet that performed in front of the signs with which he misled those who received that mark. It is fitly termed a false prophet, for it has served as a spokesman for the wild beast, Satan's visible organization, and that with the voice of a dragon. It will have the same destiny as that of the wild sea beast, for while still alive, they both were hurled into the fiery lake that burns with sulfur. This lake of fire is elsewhere shown in the Bible to be the second death, that is, eternal annihilation. Revelation 20:14. Now, we're going to jump ahead. That was in 1962. Okay? And now we're going to jump ahead 13 years. We're going to go to the Watchtower of 1975, April 15th, pages 228 to 29, paragraphs 4 through 6. The title is Who is Jehovah, so that all should worship him. Likening disturbed, discontented, self-seeking mankind in general to the restless sea, John proceeds to say, and it, that is to say the fiery-colored dragon, stood still upon the sand and the sea, and I saw a wild beast ascending out of the sea. Now this again is the sea of mankind, the sea of humanity, with 10 horns and 7 heads, and upon its horns 10 diadems, but upon its heads blasphemous names. Now, why does it say 10 heads, or 10 horns and 7 heads? Well, there's been 7 world powers. The Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Anglo-Americans. 7 world powers to date. When this was written, there was only 6. The Romans were in power. And what's the picture of the 10 horns? Well, the 10 horns represent all the governments that have ever been. And then it says upon its horns 10 diadems, but upon its heads blasphemous names. Now, the wild beast that I saw was like a leopard, but its feet were as those of a bear, and its mouth was as a lion's mouth. And the dragon gave to the beast its power and its throne and great authority. And I saw one of its heads as though slaughtered to death, but its death stroke got healed. And all the earth followed the wild beast with admiration. And they worshipped the dragon because it gave the authority to the wild beast. And they worshipped the wild beast with the words, who is like the wild beast, who can do battle with it. Now, the death stroke that got healed, that's where this apostate, this last apostate that emailed me, is all confused. He thinks that this governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses said that that 6th head was the Roman Empire that got slaughtered and then healed. Well, technically it was the 7th head, and it was only part of it was received the stroke, and that was Britain. And during World War II, and of course, then the United States got in, and who won the war? And then they started worshiping the power behind the United States. And they started saying things like, who is like the beast and who can do battle with it? Even today they say that. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and tongue and nation, and all those who dwell on the earth will worship it. Revelation 13:1-8. Now people ask, who is like the wild beast? So we ask, what does it picture? Well, from John's description of this symbolic wild beast and what happens to it, there can be no question about what it pictures. The role that the wild beast plays in the book of Revelation shows what it pictures: the worldwide system of political rule over all mankind. That's what this seven-headed dragon pictures. The fact that the wild beast looked like a leopard but had bear's feet and a lion's mouth harmonizes well with the fact that the world system of politics has expressed itself through various forms of government at different times and places, and those governments have always been symbolized by wild beast. Most likely, John was led to think of what that ancient prophet Daniel saw in a prophetic dream. The first, a lion-like beast, came up out of the disturbed sea, the sea of humanity, see? And then a beast like the bear, and after it, the beast like a leopard. Moreover, Daniel was plainly told that those beasts pictured political rulerships that would arise and control the earth like superpowers, Daniel 7, 1 through 18. So the oddly formed wild beast that John saw symbolized worldwide political system that has expressed itself through a number of governmental kinds over the last 4,500 years. Now we're going to go into the Revelation Climax book, chapter 28, pages 190 and 192, contending with two ferocious beasts and the death stroke. Early in the Lord's day, calamity strikes the wild beast. John reports, and I saw one of its heads as though slaughtered to death, but its death stroke got healed, and all the earth followed the wild beast with admiration. Revelation 13:3. Now this verse says that one head of the wild beast received a death stroke, but verse 12 speaks as though the entire beast suffered. Why is that? Well, the beast heads are not all in the ascendancy together. Each in its turn has lorded it over mankind, particularly over God's people. Revelation 17:10. Thus, as the Lord's day begins, there is only one head, the seventh, acting as the dominant world power. A death stroke on that head brings great distress to the entire wild beast. What was the death stroke? Well, later it is called a sword stroke, and a sword is a symbol of warfare. So naturally, it was warfare, and that's World War I. This sword stroke, administered early in the Lord's day, must relate to the First World War, see, which devastated and drained Satan's political wild beast. Revelation 6:4, 6:8, Revelation 13:14. Our author, Maurice Genevoix, who was a military officer during that war, said of it this. He said this about that war, and I quote and unquote, everyone agrees in recognizing that in the whole history of mankind, few dates have had the importance of August 2nd, 1914. First, Europe, and soon after, almost all humanity found themselves plunged into a dreadful event. Conventions, agreements, moral laws, all the foundations shook. From one day to the next, everything was called into question. The event was to exceed both instinctive forebodings and reasonable anticipations. Enormous, chaotic, monstrous, it still drags us in its wake. Maurice Genevoix, member of the Académie Française, quoted in the book A Promise of Greatness, 1968. For the dominant seventh head of the wild beast, it was a major disaster. Along with other European nations, Britain lost its young men in dramatic numbers, really. In one battle alone, the Battle of the River Somme, in 1916, there were 420,000 British casualties, along with some 194,000 French and 440,000 German. More than 1 million casualties in one battle. Economically, too, Britain, together with the rest of Europe, was shattered. The huge British Empire staggered under the blow and never fully recovered. Indeed, that war, with 28 leading nations participating, sent the entire world reeling as if by death blow. On August 4th, 1979, just 65 years after the outbreak of World War I, The Economist of London, England, commented, in 1914, the world lost a coherence which it has not managed to recapture since. At the same time, the Great War, as it was then called, opened the way for the United States to emerge distinctly as part of the Anglo-American world power. For the first years of the war, public opinion kept the United States out of the conflict. See, just Britain received it. But as historian S.M.E. Wingfield Stratford wrote, it was all a question of whether, at this hour of supreme crisis, Britain and the United States would sink their differences in the realization of their overmastering unity and common trusteeship. As events turned out, they did. In 1917, the United States contributed her resources and manpower to bolster the war effort of the staggering Allies. Thus, the seventh head, combining Britain and the United States, came out on the winning side. So you see, technically, that seventh head received that sword stroke, that death blow, kind of. If the United States hadn't come to the aid of Europe, Europe would be German now. It would be Europo-German or something, who knows. But you see, the United States, that second part of that world power, that seventh world power, came to the aid of Great Britain. The world after the war was vastly different. Satan's earthly system, although devastated by the death stroke, revived and became more powerful than ever, and so won the admiration of humans because of its recuperative power. Historian Charles L. Meade Jr. writes, "The collapse of the old order, caused by the First World War, was a necessary prelude to the spread of self-rule, the liberation of new nations and classes, the release of new freedom and independence." Unquote. Leading in the development of this post-war era was the seventh head of the wild beast, now healed, and with the United States of America moving into the dominant role. The dual world power took the lead in advocating both the League of Nations and the United Nations, the eighth king. By the year 2005, U.S. political power had led the more privileged nations in creating a higher standard of living, in fighting disease, and in advancing technology. And it even placed 12 men on the moon. It is no wonder, therefore, that mankind in general has followed the wild beast with admiration. Mankind has even gone beyond admiring the wild beast, as John next states, and they worshipped the dragon because it gave the authority to the wild beast. And they worshipped the wild beast with the words, "Who is like the wild beast? Who can do battle with it?" You almost read that every day in the news, on Yahoo there. And they've got these little stories. Who could attack the United States? Who could actually war with the United States? The United States spends more money on armaments than Russia, China, and Europe combined. Now, Jesus did not dispute this, because while Jesus was here on earth, Satan claimed to have authority over all the kingdoms of the earth. Remember when he showed Jesus all that? Satan referred to himself as the ruler of the world. Jesus didn't dispute that. John later wrote, "True Christians, we know we originate with God, but the whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one." 1 John 5:19. Satan delegates authority to the wild beast, and he does this on a nationalistic basis. Thus, instead of being united in bonds of godly love, mankind has become divided by pride of tribe, race, and nation. Look at the racists we have in this country today. The white supremacy, the black, the brown, all thinking they're better than everybody else. The great majority of people worship, in effect, that part of the wild beast having authority in the land where they happen to live, see? Thus, the whole beast gains admiration and worship. Worship in what sense, though? In the essence of putting love of country ahead of love of God. Most people love the land of their birth. As good citizens, true Christians also respect the rulers and emblems of the country where they reside. They obey the laws and make a positive contribution to the welfare of their community and their neighbors. Romans 13:1-7, 1 Peter 2:13-17. They cannot, however, give blind devotion to one country as against all others. Our country, right or wrong, is not a Christian teaching. So Christians who worship Jehovah God cannot share in giving prideful patriotic worship to any part of the wild beast. For this would amount to worshiping the dragon, who is behind the wild beast, the source of the authority. They cannot ask admiringly, who is like the wild beast? Rather, they follow the example of Michael, his name meaning, who is like God, with question mark, as they uphold Jehovah's universal sovereignty. At God's appointed time, this Michael, Jesus Christ, will do battle with the wild beast and conquer it. Even as he triumphed in expelling Satan from heaven, Revelation 12:7-9, 19 and 11, 19, Revelation 19:19-21. And that's it. That's the story of the wild beast and what they represent. The seventh wild beast is the Anglo-American wild beast. And that's the last. There will be no other man-made world power. Now, they call Russia a world power. No, it's not a world power. They call China a world power. No, it's not a world power. Only America and Great Britain is the dual world power today. Now, it's true that Russia is now the kingdom of the north. And they harass the kingdom of the south. And the south harasses the kingdom of the north. And, they keep going back and forth. Sometime China might get in there. But make no doubt about it. The world power today is the Anglo-American. Think about it. The skies are controlled by the Americans. The seas, they're controlled by the Americans. That's a fact. They have the greatest Navy and they have the greatest Air Force of all the others put together. So the dominant world power today is the Anglo-American. And there's going to be no other world power. This is the world power that will be destroyed at Armageddon, along with all the nations that support the eighth king. Now what happens is all these nations are going to give their power to the United Nations. And once they do that, the United Nations is going to turn on organized false religion. And they're going to completely burn it with fire. Which means they're not only going to take the property and the money, but they're going to murder all the hierarchy, the clergy. All of them are going to die violently. And that's before Armageddon. That's when the tribulation, the great tribulation that Jesus foretold in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. That's it. That's what's going to happen. So now you got the true picture of what the wild beasts symbolize in the Bible. They always symbolize government. Always. All the time, wild beasts symbolizes sin. Now, if you watch my last two videos, you'll notice that this idiot had second thoughts. He thinks that he can get the truth on his own, and nobody can get it except him. Jehovah compromises for him. Oh yeah, Jehovah wouldn't give it to the Ethiopian eunuch on his own. He wouldn't give it to any of us on our own, but he gives it to this idiot on his own. And this guy does not attend the hall. He doesn't love his neighbor, which I already substantiated. If he loved his neighbor, he would be out trying to save his neighbor's lives, not buying him gifts and starting bank accounts for him. Jesus said, the greatest of all commands is to love God with everything you have, your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind. And the second like it. You can't do one without the other. is to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, this last moron thinks that loving his neighbor is the guy that lives on this side of him, the guy that lives on this side of him, the guy that lives in front of him, across the street, and the guy that lives across the alley behind him. That's the extent of his neighbors. Do you really think that's what Jesus was talking about when he said you have to love your neighbor as yourself? No. He was talking about everybody, except for the apostates. You're not included in that if you're an apostate, especially if you've committed blasphemy. Now that's between you and Jehovah whether you committed blasphemy. But a lot of you have committed blasphemy, and if you have, you might as well turn off these videos because they ain't going to help you at all. But the ones who are on the fence, we want you back. Thanks for watching this video and have a great day.